Okay, we are back with my favorite cold open. I'm so #blessed that Eric assigns me the top of the pops for every mini season. It's always my favorite. Though I will say, when we get into the 50s and 40s, my knowledge of music is much less. But shout out to Spotify, not sponsored. But if you want to sponsor us, Spotify, call me up because I'm a loyal fan. Had all these songs so I could listen to them. And wow, it is Cultural Appropriation Hour here in 1948. We're going to start with the only representative that is though could be maybe because it's a white guy playing the 12th Street Rag. Which, by the way, if you were to put other rags against this one, I would not be able to tell you the difference. So if you love ragtime, 12th Street Rag is for you.
It started off and it was just dun and dun and dun and dun and dun 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 dun, and I'm like, this is like the most famous song in the world, and then it just went into this random instrumental, do 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 do. Okay, I mean, it's a rag.
Cool. Isn't that the song from Star Wars Cantina? Or is that the one you just did?
I think the 12th Street Rag crawled so the George Lucas could fly.
I'm sure that there's been many dissertations written on the song in the cantina by grad students. All right, next up is probably the most painful song of the three. At number 2 is Mañana is Soon Enough for Me by Peggy Lee, where she has a Spanish accent. And I just basically sat there like the yikes emoji listening to it. Yikes.
I love me some Peggy Lee, but this was there's a reason this one is not remembered in her canon. I have the CD of the best of Peggy Lee, and even though this was the number 2 song of 1948, this one is nowhere to be found. It's just a song about, how Mexican people are lazy. Yay. Bad. Yikes. No good.
No good. You can skip that one. And then last is our friend Bing Crosby singing a song subtitled the Maori farewell song, Now Is the Hour, with a also vaguely ethnic beat behind him.
Not really. I mean, I was kidding when I said it sounds so ethnic because it sounded not ethnic at all. If you didn't tell me it was the Maori farewell song, I would have thought it was a typical Bing Crosby crooning over an orchestra. Like, there's nothing offensive about this one until you mention that there's something, cultural about it. And I'm like, then why'd they choose Bing Crosby? By the way, I went to Gonzaga University where Bing Crosby went, and there is a statue of Bing Crosby outside the library, the Crosby Library, on campus. And it was a rite of passage for the students at Gonzaga to always steal his pipe because it would pop right off if you just,
Awesome.
Yeah. So a lot of people left Gonzaga with a bronze rendition of Bing Crosby's pipe in their suitcase.
So they had to cast it every time somebody stole it?
Yes, every time they stole it, they'd make a new one and stick it back on there. And then somebody, it would last for a couple of weeks and somebody would steal it again.
Oh, that's expensive, but funny.
Yeah, but I don't even know if it was really bronze. It's probably why they snapped off so easily. Anyway.
They 3D print that shit now. They know it's going to happen.
Yeah, they totally do. Paint some bronze paint on it and call it a day.
He probably doesn't even smoke anymore because, purity police. So,
yeah, well.
Whatever.
Welcome to the Rewind Project, where Allie, Matt, and Eric take another look at your favorite milestone movies through the lens of our present day. Will it be a skip, rent, or buy? Stay tuned and find out.
Okay, folks, welcome back. We are continuing our series of the films of 1948 that are all celebrating their 75th anniversary this year, 2023. And this time, we have a holiday-themed musical, much to Allie's chagrin. But it's not a Christmas musical because there wasn't really one in 1948 that was worth
Thank God.
doing anything about. So we went back to Easter Parade. This one was directed by Charles Walters, screenplay, such as it was, by Sidney Sheldon, Francis Goodrich, and Albert Hackett, with original songs by Irving Berlin. Which just makes me laugh because it's like, we need a song that, we need a musical that's centered on a holiday about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Let's find that Jewish songwriter who did the, really popular Christmas song a couple years back.
I had to look this up because this is the same Sidney Sheldon that is the famous author Sidney Sheldon. I just looked him up.
Really?
Yeah, the screenwriter. So he went on to have a illustrious career, which, I mean, not reflected.
What do you like medical body horror thrillers, right? I mean, isn't that like, or am I thinking of somebody else?
No, I think you're thinking of somebody else. He wrote like a lot of, If Tomorrow Comes, The Sands of Time, more romancy, I think, type books. But it is the same Sidney Sheldon, and he also wrote The Miracle Worker. So go Sidney.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't find this movie remotely religious. I mean, it happens at Easter.
Not at all.
So it's like,
no, it reduces Easter to like, oh, it's a fashion parade. It's the same way that like, Christmas movies are all about, getting your kid the toy they want, and it has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, exactly. This is so secular. It's kind of hilarious. And it's made in 1948. So I wonder, like, did we just get religious like in the 50s and 60s and all of a sudden, and like we care about this stuff now or something?
I don't know. I mean, Easter Parade was a song that was included in Holiday Inn, which was a 1942 movie. Mm-hmm. And Holiday Inn also introduced the world to White Christmas, which of course wasn't made into its own movie until the 50s.
Yeah.
But Holiday Inn was Bing Crosby, and the gimmick is he founded an inn in Vermont that was only open on holidays. And so every holiday had a song. And, you just go through this calendar year and White Christmas is the last song. And I think there's a New Year's song that opens it up. And, every holiday gets like its own little tune. And so Easter Parade was the song that Bing Crosby crooned behind the piano at Easter. And then here we are 6 years later, and it's like, we need to open a musical. Let's just take a song that everybody knows. So it was just about the fact that, and the song's about a pretty hat. I mean, it's just like, it's not about Easter, but here we are.
Yeah, it's vaguely about. I didn't even realize that New York used to do parades, quote unquote, that, people just walk down the street in their finery. And that was the actual parade. Apparently that is actually true.
Yeah.
That's actually true. So like, I mean, I kind of meta in that sense. It's like you would imagine people today, like, we're on social media, just like all of a sudden having a parade that was about them, like no floats, no nothing, just people like walking down the street in their finery.
That's my kind of parade. Like, sign me up. Like, let me like get dressed up and go up and down Fifth Avenue. Done.
Yeah.
But then done. Marching bands, no floats. Literally just spotlight on us walking in our finery. A+, yes.
So you saved up a lot of time, to buy that hat because you had to have the most fabulous hat on the street. And that was the Easter Parade. Yeah. So there we are. Notable achievements for this movie, a couple. It was the Oscar winner for Best Music and Scoring of a Musical Picture in 1948. Won the Writers Guild Award for the Best Written American Musical. That went to Sheldon Goodrich and Albert Hackett. And Easter Parade was MGM's highest grossing film of 1948. So it was the best film for that particular studio. And I think is just generally remembered for being made at a time that Judy Garland was doing really well in her life and career. And this is just, if you love Judy, that's why you watch this movie.
Well, I mean, this movie did not knock my socks off. I can see why it probably did really well in 1948, because at the end of the movie, you just kind of feel good. I mean, it's a really anticlimactic finish, but like, there's nothing controversial really about the film. It's just not really exciting either. It's just kind of a movie that was made.
So the plot is basically this. When he is unceremoniously dumped by his partner, a song and dance man, played by Fred Astaire, sets out to prove that he could train anyone to take her place. So he goes to this ratty little bar and he looks at the chorus line and he goes, I don't know, I'll get her. Well, he just randomly picks out Judy Garland out of a chorus line. So, I guess you can train Judy Garland to take the place of your former partner. And as the thing goes on, romantic complications and shenanigans ensue, because apparently in 1948, a man and woman could not work together without also having sex.
That lasts for a long time. All the way to When Harry Met Sally. And perhaps beyond. I had no idea that Fred Astaire was in this movie, so imagine my surprise when his name popped up in the credits.
Yeah, there he is. Let's get into this cast. Of course, the headliner, the whole reason for me to watch this movie is Judy Garland plays Hannah Brown, who is briefly known in the film as Juanita.
Yikes.
Yeah, again, another bit of a yikes on that one. So I want to hear your guys' take on either Hannah or Judy or both. But first, I want to play you a little conversation that I had with my friend Christopher Peterson, who is a female impersonator who lives down in Key West, Florida. You'll hear in the conversation, he originally hails from Canada. I love him so much, and he does a fantastic Judy Garland. So I had a little bit of a conversation with him earlier this week about Judy and why we love Judy and a little bit more, because he's also played her in an entire play and studied her, like knows everything about her life story.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, let's get his take. So let me play that for you, and we'll talk about it on the other side. So I'm super happy to be joined by my friend Christopher Peterson, no relation. Christopher is a renowned female impersonator, and among the ladies that he brings to the stage whenever he does a show is the fabulous Judy Garland. So I thought it would be perfect for us to have a conversation with him about Judy and her legacy and what she means to the gays and all that good stuff. So Christopher, thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be here, Mr. Eric. I have to tell you, though, before we go on, I do a much better Garland than that Jinx Monsoon creature that we've been seeing on the
I agree, by the way. I've seen you do late Judy sitting on the stage doing, Over the Rainbow, and I forgot, not only did I forget I was watching a man, I forgot I wasn't watching Judy Garland. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So why do you think that Judy is so enduring? I mean, she died the year before I was born, and we're still talking about this woman, and she's still kind of capturing everyone's imagination. What is it about her?
Well, I think one of the big things that happened when I was studying her, I did a show called Typhoon Judy, which was based on a little tiny portion of her life. And I read all the biographies and stuff. And one of the questions that get asked quite often is, why do gay men have this affinity towards her? And a lot of it that I was reading came from, again, the 40s and the 50s, when gay men were, all of them were in the closet except for maybe a handful or two. But one of the things is that just like the superstars today, like Gaga or any of them, gay men are drawn to these very powerful images of women on screen, and she's extremely vulnerable when she's on screen. So, and she also married a gay man. They all knew that Vincent Minnelli was gay, and she married him. So one of the things was, one of the codes, this from the last century, was, are you a friend of Dorothy? Was a way of asking, are you gay? It was another way of asking, are you gay? So it's just, today, it's become, like, the twinks kind of know who she is. You know what I mean? And I did make that thing at the beginning about Jinx Monsoon. I do love her, and I love the fact that she is continuing on to a new generation who has no idea, and now we're going to discover who Judy is, kind of thing. So, yeah. So I think a lot of it just has to do with, who she was as a performer. She was this amazing powerhouse performer. So she was the Barbara of her day, she's the Gaga of her day, she's the Beyonce of her day, a little whiter. So
yeah, and it's funny, I was just recently watching Easter Parade, and the very first thing that you really get to see her do is she just is wearing a cute little apron and singing this song about, how I wish again I was in Michigan, and it's this, it's this Irving Berlin, very cute kind of a thing. But the voice does not match the song. Like, she's got this voice that could go to the rafters, and she's supposed to be in this little tiny bar, do this thing. She did have this amazing instrument that somehow just fate just gave her that.
Right. Well, there's only there's a couple of handfuls of singers on the planet over the last 200 years who have that, eh? She was certainly one of the first. You have to understand, Deanna Durbin, Mr. Mayer wanted her because she was an opera singer. He didn't want the pop sound of its day, that jazz sound that she was. And they were saying, if you don't get this kid, somebody else is going to grab her. And of course, ironically, the opera sound went away, and that sound became the sound for the next 40 years. She was one of the few voices of that sound too, So yeah, she, I mean, I remember reading somebody said something about her at the age of 6 or whatever that she could blow the rafters off even at that age.
Yeah, I've often had this theory that the reason, you kind of alluded to this before, that gay men love their divas is that we love it when we can see an image of somebody who's really, really strong and it doesn't fit all that kind of traditional masculine kind of stuff. Like, you don't have to be butch to be strong. And I think that's a very empowering message that we kind of gravitate to. And it's why we love Cher and Barbara and Gaga and Madonna and, Tina Turner and Beyonce and go down the list. But Judy seems different to me than all of those, because Judy seemed to be like strong in the face of a lot of stuff. Like, she was sometimes barely holding it together. And even when she is, doing like the late stages kind of alluded to, that Over the Rainbow, where she sits on the side of the stage, I mean, she's belting it to the rafters, but also there's just a lot of pain there. I mean, is she a different kind of diva, or am I making that up?
No, she's the original. All the rest have to follow. The point is that probably, and she defined a different type. You're right, a different type of diva. It's that we want to take care of you, diva. We will be there for you. We will always be there for you, even if it's just paying the price of the ticket and seeing you. One of the things in the Judy movie that Renee Zellweger did is that wonderful scene where the two homos bring her over for dinner, and they're like freaked out by it, and she's just like, I just want a cup of tea. You know what I mean? And more than that, she wants some attention from somebody. She wants that whole thing. We forget that these are human beings. Yeah. These just are, these are people who have tried to live whatever normal life they can try to live, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think with her, it's now also for me, and I can't speak for every gay man, but certainly I think that also gay men secretly wish that they could also be these women. These are something that if I was going to perform, this is the way I want to be. Yeah.
Well, we can certainly imagine ourselves doing that, as opposed to, trying to be John Wayne and getting on a horse. And
Exactly that kind of thing. It's exactly it.
So as you know, we're talking about Judy because Easter Parade turns 75 this year. And I know that in addition to performing her, and I saw Typhoon Judy when you did it at Rehoboth. So much fun. But you did a lot of research and a lot of work getting ready for that. So you're like the Judy encyclopedia. Do you have any like stories or fun things to share about when she was doing that show? She didn't have too many, she wasn't at the depths of despair. Like, we kind of knew her, the whole Valley of the Dolls thing that came later.
Yeah. Easter Parade, stuff like Meet Me in St. Louis and Easter Parade that you're talking about. This is the height of her career at MGM. So, this is being married to Vincent Minnelli. She's at her peak of confidence. He's put her on screen and she goes, I've never looked like that before. Because she was always, Mr. Mayer's little hunchback, she was always on a diet, everything else. And she always thought she was a little bit ugly on screen. And remember, she never got Mickey Rooney in any of those damn, he always went off with Lana Turner or somebody, kind of thing, So she is like at her peak of what I would say confidence, beauty, talent. You see it in that movie. I mean, she also, there's that transition that she does in the movie, that ugly duckling to beautiful lady, that kind of thing too. So, yeah, I mean, when studying it, Easter Parade is always thought of, the chapters I read about it are always thought of how she wanted to work with Fred Astaire. That was a must. That was something that she wanted to do. And Fred said when he first met her that he couldn't believe that she could keep up with him the way she was. He didn't expect her to be such a great dancer. He was like totally shocked by that fact that she could just hoof with him easily, without even thinking that she'd pick it up right away and stuff. So you can't really, it's not a tragic movie for her like The Pirate.
No. Well, and the same year, right? I mean, The Pirate is also turning 75, but we're not talking about that one this year.
We don't talk about The Pirate, that's for sure. So,
Well, one thing that struck me when I was watching this one, and it's something I've always heard about Judy, and it's something that Liza and Lorna always want to say, is that they want to remind people how funny she was.
Yeah. Yes, very
And
much.
that moment when he's like, here, be sexy, be beautiful, and she can't figure out how, so she turns her face into a pufferfish, and they're all just kind of walking. And I'm like, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, she is. Do you think she's comically underrated?
I think she was always comically underrated. Again, reading about her, one of the things that you read about is that the original Rat Pack with Lauren Bacall and Bogey and stuff, she was the comedian at the party. She was the one that everybody turned to for the one-liner and stuff. Like, she really could do a zinger. You know what I mean? She really was. The problem is that though she did a lot of musical comedy, the comedy is written instead of allowing her to be natural with it. And she does it natural, don't get me wrong. But when when you see her in interviews, sometimes you quite realize quite quickly how funny she is.
Yeah, I wonder if, how she would have done today in the 21st century if some of these directors who just let people improvise.
I think she would have been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
I could go on singing. There's a little of that too, eh? There's a little bit of that. I think they wrote in some stuff when she was sitting around and they were doing script readings. You know what I mean? She go blah blah blah, and they go, "Oh, that's good. Write that in." Kind of.
Great. Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of insight and expertise and knowledge and all that great stuff. Before I let you go, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and where people can find you if they wanted to see you on stage somewhere.
Well, if they want to see me on stage, I'm at Lottie Da in Key West, Florida, for my 23rd season, which is they built the showroom 23 years ago for me, which is great. But hopefully, this New Year's Eve, Sushi, who usually comes down in the shoe on CNN here in Key West, retired last year. So this year they asked me to do it.
Wow.
Yes. So hopefully CNN will be coming in, and I think we might be doing a pre-interview about drag in Florida right at the moment also. So,
that's timely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we're kind of, it'll be a bit of a heavy hitter thing, but it's worth it. So.
Okay. Well, I stopped watching CNN when they fired Kathy Griffin, but I will make an exception for you.
There you go, darling. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us, and love to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that was Christopher. And by the way, I have heard from him since I had that conversation. The dropping of the shoe in Key West has been confirmed. So he will be riding the shoe. I don't know if he'll make it onto CNN, but I imagine CNN will want to talk to a drag queen in Florida, given where we are in 2023. So I will be looking for Christopher on CNN the night of New Year's Eve. So everyone who is listening, please do the same. But what did you think about what Christopher had to say?
I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I have my quarrels with this movie, which we'll get into, but I've always sort of wondered where the friend of Dorothy thing came from. And I just, as somebody who has studied her, obviously he's a lot more knowledgeable than I am. And I don't know, I thought it was all very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always associated a friend of Dorothy with Wizard of Oz. So that's where I because we gay people love the Wizard of Oz because a lot of the storylines that go inside there. So I've kind of always assumed it was because of that movie. So it
is. I mean, that's what it's from, but that's just something that Judy was because she was Dorothy.
Too. Exactly.
Yeah. And also, one thing that we didn't get into, and I think there's a whole lot of reasons why gay men love Judy Garland. But one of the ones is that she loved us back. I mean, there was there's this very famous interview where it probably wouldn't play very well in 2023. But somebody asks her about all the gay men in her audience, and she's basically like, now leave them alone. And she didn't really defend or say, gay is good or love is love or anything that we would say, in 2023. But she basically tells them to back off. And the best she can say about her gay fans, they're not hurting anybody. But everybody knew that she was perfectly fine with gay people. Loved the fact that we were very loyal fans of hers. Loved the fact that they showed up time after time to see her play live. And and I'd forgotten about that scene in the Renee Zellweger movie until Christopher brought that up. But that was, kind of a fun moment. So what did you all think of Judy Garland, either as a performer or particularly in this movie or this character she played, Hannah/Wanda? Juanita.
I mean, it's funny that Judy Garland, this giant personality, this person that we know, plays meek characters. It's really interesting to me. Never really dawned on me, but like, Dorothy is too. And in this, she is the non-talent that automatically they start to train, and she becomes a bigger and bigger personality and stuff. But she's the ingenue, the one that nobody knows. And it's kind of weird that Judy Garland is always playing this character and plays it well. I mean, she plays the innocent character very, very well, I thought. And
I wouldn't say, meek. She's vulnerable. I mean, I think she has some vulnerabilities. She wears them kind of openly. I don't think the film was trying to say that she didn't have talent. I mean, she sang that, dopey little song about, I wish I was in Michigan or however it goes, in the bar before Fred Astaire ever gets his mitts on her and tries to mold her and shape her in some way. I think it's just that she had a kind of talent. She was not Ann Miller.
yeah,
She was not this glamorous ballroom dancer, and she was never going to be. She was more of this kind of relatable girl. And once he learned that he needed to let her be her, it was fine, and they were a huge hit.
Yeah.
Because Ann Miller would not put on that tramp costume and walk around with black on her teeth and, an ill-fitting suit and do a funny dance. Like, that would just never, ever, ever, ever happen.
Yeah.
I'm agnostic about Judy Garland as a whole. Like, I think she's talented, sure. I would not seek out her movies. I don't love The Wizard of Oz. Sorry, don't at me. But I thought she was fine in this movie. I have a confession to make. I also didn't know that this movie was a musical. And let me tell you, I was enjoying the story until the first break of song came on. And then, it was like...
There was no story. It started off with Fred Astaire walking down the street going, Happy Easter, Happy Easter.
It started off... Well, yes. So it started off with that. And then I was like, okay, maybe it's just like an intro song. And then like every time I would get invested into the story, they would break in a fucking song. And all of the songs were dumb. And I found myself getting more and more irritated because if I had known that it was going to be a musical, I think that I could have been in that zone. But
your loins.
I could have girded my loins. I could have I don't know, put on some popcorn, whatever. But I just was unaware of this. And I was like, oh God, this is a musical. And I like musicals to an extent. This was not a great musical, in my opinion. But yeah, so that just soured me. I thought she was fine. I was impressed with how good she danced in this movie and how she really was a perfect match to Fred Astaire, who is we all know is so talented as a dancer, as an actor. We'll get to him in a second, but that was very shocking to me. Is that I guess I just didn't realize that she was that good of a dancer that she could, keep up with Fred Astaire. So that was impressive.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she's fine.
Your comments about her dancing are true too. I thought the same thing when they first started, that I was actually kind of surprised how good of a dancer she was. I also think that has to do a little bit with Fred Astaire and how patient of a teacher he probably was. Because I think he was, unlike Gene Kelly, who was a monster on set, Fred Astaire is reportedly a much nicer person on set.
Yeah, well, Fred Astaire taught Debbie Reynolds how to dance for Singing in the Rain, and he wasn't even in that movie. So, yes. But like Christopher said, Fred Astaire was really stunned as well to how quickly she picked it up.
Yeah.
He didn't have to be that patient. I mean, she really was just kind of there. And again, this is a point in her life where the addiction wasn't out of control. She was on set. She was on time. She was attentive. She was, at her kind of peak creatively, and she was able to pick all this stuff up. The thing that I really noticed about Judy Garland in this movie is that she doesn't show up for the first 15 minutes of a movie that is less than 2 hours long. And for the first 15 minutes, I was like, where the fuck is Judy Garland? Like, where is she? And I'll be honest with you, I was not really enjoying the movie until she showed up, like really at all. And the reason why, well, let's talk about Fred Astaire as Don Hughes.
I mean, I always enjoyed Fred Astaire on screen. Is he going to tear it up? No. He's kind of a very mild personality regardless. I didn't find any kind of attraction to any of his partners.
None. Zero.
There was no sex appeal coming off of him. There was no sexual tension for anything.
Agreed.
So every time he turned around, it's like, oh, I'm in love with you. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's news to all of us because we can't talk.
100%. I think that's why I didn't love this movie. I didn't like this movie either, is that like, and I know we're going to get into this, but like Judy and Fred, God love them, maybe they were besties, but they had absolutely 0% chemistry. Like
Yes.
none. And I just was like, wait, what? Yeah, no, I didn't. That really took me out of the movie.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, Fred Astaire, poor thing. Listen, I am not Henry Cavill walking around. I'm not Rob Lowe. I'm not John Stamos. I'm not Brad Pitt. Fred Astaire has a very awkward look about him. I mean, he's just, if he didn't have everything he could do below his neck, working for him, he's just doesn't have movie star written all over him.
No.
So there's that. And that's very shallow of me to say. Beyond that, I think you're absolutely right, Matt. He doesn't kind of create sparks really with anybody except the one time that I thought, oh, now this is interesting. And this is where the very first time I watched this movie, I thought, oh, this is going in an interesting direction. When Ann Miller, who we'll talk about in a moment, convinces him to dance with her after his big opening night with Judy, which gets her all upset. And she leaves the room. I always thought the reason she left the room is because he actually did have chemistry with Ann Miller on the dance floor.
Yes.
The two of them dancing together was actually pretty sexy. So I think he was probably, again, a really good actor from the neck down when there was music playing and when he had choreography through which to interpret what his character was going through. Just when he's just sitting there, I mean, he's not, like at one, when she confessed that she was in love with Dawn, I was like, why?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like, he's a dick to you, first of all. He treats you terribly. And, they're just, what is it about him that ew. I mean, it didn't do anything for me.
I really thought that the next person we were going to talk about was going to be the love interest. And
it
was going to be like a love triangle, but that never even came out either. So it's like, what is going on here? I don't even... I understood none of the relationships at all.
But before we leave Fred alone, I mean, brilliant dancer.
Of course.
I mean, just amazing. Like, and this movie really let him a lot of dance numbers, a lot of places where, what he does well, you can enjoy what he does well quite a bit because he's dancing quite a lot. But, other than that, I just, Don Hughes, not a very well-written character, Writers Guild Award notwithstanding, I just didn't see what about him other than that, their names were above the title. So obviously they needed to fall in love with each other. It just seemed to be the rationale behind the whole thing.
But did they? I mean, that's the other thing. Like, he seems like an asexual person anyway. So why not create more tension by like him wanting? I would actually prefer the Red Shoes treatment of this movie where he doesn't really want her to get involved with other people because he wants her to commit to their job. You know what I mean? So like, I would rather see her start to create a relationship with the next person we're going to talk about and he get a little upset about it. So,
yeah. I mean, that would have, and clearly you could make that movie in 1948 because somebody did. And we talked about it last week. It was funny, Allie, you kind of mentioned these archetypes of showbiz movies. And as we were watching this one, I was like, there's the girl. Yep. She's kind of an ingenue. It's the impresario. He's kind of a dick. There's the the young, and I was like, it all just kind of fits. And there's Ann Miller as the
as the
older
diva.
kind of the diva. It's all kind of right there. Although this one like just didn't like again it was that lack of sparks. I mean, I think he could have even been as much of a dick as he was if there was moments when they were dancing and like all of a sudden they lingered before they separated and they were both feeling a little something in their groins. I would be like, okay, there are sparks flying, but there just were none. There were none.
Less than none. I'd like no, even Tinder, striking a fire, no sparks whatsoever.
Well, even in their argument at the door, I still don't get the sense that he's really upset that she doesn't love. I mean, that she's angry with him. I think it feels like more like friends fighting. It is not. There was no tension whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about my ex-husband in a past life.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Peter Lawford as Jonathan Johnny Harrow III.
So, He's so fucking hot.
Yes.
Okay, I just need to get that out there. And
Yes.
I went down a Peter Lawford Wikipedia rabbit hole because I was like, let me learn more about this hot man. And did not
I
realize.
don't know if you recall, but he was in The Picture of Dorian Gray, which we discussed on this very show.
I did not put two and two together until I went down this rabbit hole. Also learning that he was a member of the Rat Pack and then kicked out of the Rat Pack because he married a Kennedy, and I guess he was supposed to do something for Frank Sinatra vis-a-vis the Kennedys. I didn't go that far and didn't. And so they kicked him out, didn't speak until Frank Sinatra Jr. was born. Anyway, I went down this. He had a crazy life. And then obviously, like in this latter part, he was much more known as Lothario than as an actor. But he's really
Well, I remember when we were talking about The Picture of Dorian Gray, I was like, Peter Lawford, so beautiful. And you all were like, And I was like, oh, and I think it's just because I'd seen this one before, and my crush was well developed before we watched that one. And
I could see it in this one. I saw it in this one, and I was like, wow, he's so hot, and I just and he didn't end up with anyone, and I'm like, go with him.
Well, okay, so I kind of got a sense that, I mean, in the beginning of the film, that Peter Lawford's character might have been family, and like because he wanted nothing to do with Nadine. Really. Yeah,
he rebuffed Nadine
real quick, and seemed more interested in Johnny's life than in Don's life than anything else. Like they were best friends, and he always showed up when Don needed him, even to the point at the end where he was really the reason that Don got back together with Hannah. Is because he went to talk to Hannah for Don, essentially.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
the most understanding friend-zoned dude you've ever met in your entire life. It's like,
best wingman ever.
Yes, like I love you. Well, I love your best friend. Okay, well, let me drop everything and do everything I can to make sure that you and he end up together and happy. Why? Yeah, I just, and even though, I'll say this for Peter Lawford, so hot that even when he sings badly, because Fellow with an Umbrella was not the musical, performance of the year.
Wow, sure was not.
But the two of them actually had, when she started singing back to him, I was like, I'm seeing sparks now.
Thank you, me too.
I see.
I'm in 100% agreement.
Why?
When I read your outline and I saw what we're going to be talking about after the cast, I was like, yup, check, and check.
Yeah.
And nothing.
So let's wrap up our cast. I'm only talking about 4 people this time. Ann Miller as Nadine Hale. First of all, I love Ann Miller. She's so fun. I like her a lot.
I thought she was great. I love an entitled diva bitch, always and forever. And she could back it up with the talent. I loved how she matched the dogs to her outfits. All of it was just like crazy over the top. And I was like, Ann Miller, A+.
Yeah. I love when she handed the pug to her maid, and the maid was like, who pushed in your face? Oh, snap. Don't at me, pug people.
I do think her best number, though, was her dance number with Fred Astaire right after her opening number for her big show. It was sad that her big show number really had nothing to do with her. It was about so many other things, like all these other women in photos from or paintings from the magazine. I was just really kind of sad that she shows up like at the last third of that number and is supposed to wow us, and it's just her kind of like walking in and out of men, and it's not showcasing any of her talent whatsoever.
Yeah, but we'd already seen her on stage by herself, tapping up a storm.
I know, but I want to see her again. Like, so I'm glad we got another number. I mean, she's got talent.
Yes,
so
she does.
Let's showcase it.
I think, for me, I guess you're right. You're absolutely right. And I didn't really notice it because to me, the whole point was, is she any good or not? And as soon as we see her on stage by herself, it's like, oh yeah, she's good. Yeah. She knows what the fuck she is doing. She's awesome. And, and she also is kind of one of those things where, she left the act in her very first scene in a very kind of mean way. But at the same time, it's like, she's supposed to go to Chicago with Fred Astaire on a contract that he signed on her behalf that she never signed. And as we later find out, Florence Ziegfeld says, I want you to headline the Ziegfeld Follies, and she's supposed to go to Chicago.
No.
No, Nadine, you did exactly what you were supposed to
Correct.
do.
Oh, absolutely.
Correct.
Also, because as we learned, Don Hughes is kind of an asshole. So yeah, between Don Hughes and Florence Ziegfeld, who was no, saint either, but go with Florence's.
That scene where he was buying all of Hannah's outfits and everything was so reminiscent of Vertigo, and that horrible scene in Vertigo too, where he's just controlling, trying to buy her. No, we need the gray suit. Like it was so weird and so patriarchal.
Yes,
patriarchal.
Well, and it was also because, at the time, he hadn't really learned his lesson yet. And by the way, the her that Matt's talking about is Judy, not Anne.
Yeah.
But yes, when he's trying to, turn her into the next Nadine, which, by the way, is my grandmother's name. And so not a very, glamorous name as far as I was ever concerned, because Nadine Peterson, was many wonderful things. Glamorous was never really one of them. But, he's trying to turn Hannah, aka Juanita, into a fabulous, glamorous, sophisticated ballroom dancer, and everything that she feels comfortable in or she thinks is beautiful, he's like, nope, we're going to go with that one instead. Yeah, and it was really gross.
It was gross.
But then he turns around and says, you've got to be you, and that was, she was doing something wrong, and she did let him have it. So, good for you, Hannah. Stand your ground. So something that we've all been kind of dancing around, as it were, on this little show is my big hot take on this movie is, did our romantic pair end up with the wrong partners? And I'm hearing everyone say yes. Am I crazy, or would this have been more of a satisfying ending if Hannah had married Johnny, or at least gone off with Johnny, married? That's very 1948 of me. Hannah had paired up with Johnny, Peter Lawford. Don had gone back to Nadine, who he can dance up a storm with. And I would have said, and Hannah and Hughes still remain a big, huge, record-breaking Broadway smash.
Yes.
They don't have to be a couple in order to work together on Broadway. They could both be with other people, and guess what? They could be platonic friends. That can happen. Sorry, Nora Ephron. It's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and look at figure skaters, almost always they're not romantic with each other.
Almost always he's gay, but yes.
Well, but, it's a good, who knows, maybe Don is too, or asexual, as you said, Matt, and they work wonders, they do these magical pairs, and they're not romantically, they just mesh as dancers. So yeah.
Well, and I think when you're working with somebody like that, especially when you're working on ice, I don't know, that seems to add a whole level of risk, beyond just, what Hughes and Nadine were doing. You need to trust each other. There has to be a huge level of trust. So I imagine, yes, they are very good friends, but being romantically involved, just sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of your bed and your partner just pisses you off. You're probably not going to do real well on the ice or the ballroom floor that day. You're not going to work off of each other as well as platonic friends could. Absolutely do that.
Yeah, I think it's better.
And again, you don't need to be romantically involved to dress up as a couple of bums and sing, we're just a couple of swells.
God, I hated that song. I hated it so much. I hated it so much.
It was too long. It was like an SNL skit. It started out and I was enjoying it. And I'm like, okay, we wrap this up.
Yeah. I feel like Irving Berlin wrote 5 verses and he was like, I'll pick the best 3. And then they just kept all 5.
Yeah.
Irving Berlin, here's the thing. I love a tuneful song. Irving Berlin writes great tunes. I think he needed another lyricist besides himself.
That would have helped, because most of the songs in this movie are just forgettable. There's nothing. The opening number is great, not because of the song, but because of Fred Astaire's dance routine. That I really enjoyed it. Just watching him in the toy store with the whole dance was actually really interesting. I liked that, but the song, I have no idea. And then we get to the next one where the ladies are coming in and talking about Easter and stuff, and all I could hear was that song from SNL, and I'm Judy. Because the song was basically the same, and I couldn't stop laughing. And then the only one that I really remember is the one that Judy Garland sang about Michigan, which was just, I kept thinking corn pudding from Schmigadoon. Like, it's just kind of like one of those songs that we make fun of now. She sang it great, but there's nothing about the music in this movie that really,
I think that song was just there to say Judy Garland is in the big city, but she's a down home girl.
She's a down home gal.
You know, and then so when you tried to like put her in the outfit with the feathers all over the sleeves and, you know, she was supposed to look ridiculous. Mm. And then when they let her be her, you know, suddenly she was back in these cute little vaudeville costumes miming a violin, or, you know, I Love a Piano, which is, that's a great song. Easter Parade is very, you know, it's catchy, but again, it's about a hat. I mean, it's not like these are not the most profound lyrics in the world. So Faye is going to listen to this and she's going to smack me across the face the next time she sees me for saying anything mean about Irving Berlin, who is one of her heroes. But yeah, I mean, Irving Berlin had the hits he had is when he got really good with the lyrics. The rest of his songs, all very tuneful. And I think with a different lyricist could have been really fun. Yeah. But and you're right. The Couple of Swells is fun for the first 3 verses. And then it just, you know, again and again and again and again and again.
As soon as Judy came out with black in her teeth, I was like, and we're done here.
I think that was a thing, though, that Judy liked to do. I mean, I think she loved subverting expectations like that. You know, she'd done things like that before. But yeah, so, you know, I think we're all in agreement, right? I mean, it was just if she had gone off with Peter at the end. And,
100%.
You know, and then occasionally, you know, Fred Astaire and Ann Miller could have danced together at special events. But, you know, for the most part, she'd be at the Ziegfeld Follies and he would be, you know, starring with Judy Garland across the street in another Broadway theater, and everyone's happy.
Well, I mean, ultimately, that is the problem with this movie, is I think it's supposed to be a romantic comedy. I'm guessing that's the genre that we would put it in, but there was no romance really in the movie. Like,
except for when Peter Lawford is walking down the street with Judy Garland under his umbrella, and when Fred Astaire and Ann Miller are dancing together. Like, that was the thing, is that they both had so much more satisfying romantic moments with the other people than they ever did with each other. So anyway.
When I started this movie, I was like, oh, so this is kind of like the 1948 Dirty Dancing. And I was sort of equating all of the people, you know, obviously Patrick Swayze, R.I.P., and Jennifer Grey had a lot of chemistry, which is why that movie particularly worked. Yes. But it was kind of the same thing, you know, like he had to do something quickly and his partner was down. And so he trained this young girl. And I was like, oh, okay, Dirty Dancing.
Although, you know, that movie was really more about like, you know, Jennifer Grey actually had to learn how to dance. You know, this one, Judy Garland just, you know, sprang fully formed as Judy Garland, who could do all the things that she could do. It just took Fred Astaire a little time to figure out what she was good at. Which, hello, she's Judy Garland just right in front of you. So anyway, are we all ready for some fun facts at this point?
I mean, the more fun, the better.
Okay, well, you know, Matt, you mentioned Gene Kelly. Before Judy Garland was attached to this movie, Gene Kelly was originally slated to play Don. So let's just take a moment and imagine Easter Parade with Gene Kelly as Don Hughes.
I actually think Gene Kelly brings more to the acting role. I think he could play the dick better, because I kind of want to turn that up on Don a little bit, but I also think he could play the romantic interest better than poor Fred Astaire could.
Yeah. Well, and he's hot as fuck. I mean, so, you know, he could actually, the choice between Gene Kelly and Peter Lawford would actually seem like a choice.
Spoiled for choice. Woo!
Yeah. I mean, listen, Gene Kelly and Peter Lawford sandwich, I'll take 2. So that was, you know, so he was originally connected to this film. A broken ankle prevented him from filming, so he suggested that Fred Astaire take his place. And apparently Judy really wanted to work with Fred, probably because she admired his dancing. And so, you know, she got to do that with this one. Judy and Gene had just played opposite each other in a movie called The Pirate, which premiered a month before. I don't know in what order they were filmed. So, but The Pirate is kind of notable for being one of Judy's big bombs. Like, it's like the pirate movie. It was a silly musical comedy, but like aboard a pirate ship.
Oh boy! Wow.
And it's just, I mean, it's available for rent. Also in 1948. Note, I did not pick that one for us to talk
Thank
about
God.
in 2023. But yeah. Speaking of the cast of Singin' in the Rain, Sid Charisse was actually up for the role of Nadine, but had to drop out because of a torn ligament.
Wow, dancing in movies back then was really dangerous.
Dancing anywhere is like,
Yeah,
it is dangerous.
it
I mean,
is.
this happens all the time. You know, we just went to go see Funny Girl up in Baltimore, and Melissa Manchester was supposed to play Mrs. Bryce. And she was on the poster outside the theater. And I was like, Melissa Manchester? Like, don't cry out loud, Melissa Manchester? Awesome. And we went in there and I was like, no, she had broken her patella. Yeah.
Nice.
So she was out for the run. And so her understudy was great, by the way. But it was kind of like, you know, I mean, even the little bit of dancing that Mrs. Bryce had to do in Funny Girl, like, it's dangerous shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially when you were a Gene Kelly or a Sid Charisse, and it was all that kind of very physical stuff. Speaking of, let's just continue with the injury stories. Ann Miller performed "Shakin' the Blues Away," her big solo number at the Ziegfeld Follies, in a back brace.
Yikes.
She had been pushed down a flight of stairs by her then husband, and on top of everything else, she was pregnant.
Oh, so he was trying to end the pregnancy.
Or he's just an abusive. This is just typical domestic violence.
It is both,
yes,
Men.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, Anne, you know, I love you, Anne. Like, you know, just like she could have said, no, I'm not doing, but, you know, she put on her back brace and she tapped the hell out of that. I mean, and you cannot tell. You absolutely cannot tell. And you think about all the time she's spinning around, like, it just, you know.
Who is she married to?
Crazy. I don't know, but he was a dick and she got rid of him soon after. So,
oh, good.
Anyway.
Because sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Vincente Minnelli, Judy's bisexual husband, was originally slated to direct this movie, but Judy's therapist thought it was better that they didn't work together at the moment.
Fair.
Hey.
Fair.
I like a therapist earning their keep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's some good therapy.
I kind of wonder maybe what could have happened with maybe more talent. We haven't really talked about the direction of this film, only because I didn't really see a lot of direction evident. I mean, no big, bold directorial choices. Let's just put it that way.
No, it was like watching a musical, like on stage.
And Vincente Minnelli, good director, like really, really good, multiple Oscar winning, like, you know, really excellent filmmaker. So could he have done something more with this script? I don't know. Finally, there was a musical number called Mr. Monotony that was supposed to be in the big Hannah and Hughes. Remember, because Fred Astaire has his big number.
Yeah.
Right? Judy never got like her big number all by herself. There was one in the movie, but it was cut because Judy's outfit was considered too risque for a film set in 1912. So suddenly historical accuracy is important in the making of this film. Like, it's not enough that it's fine for 48 and the audiences of 48 would have found it entertaining. But, you know, she couldn't have worn a unitard in 1912 because a vaudeville performer never would have done that. So whatever.
Well,
Of course they would have.
What about Ann Miller's outfit for tap dancing on this? I mean, that was essentially a unitard. I mean, you see mostly leg, and besides the fact that Hannah has men coming up to her apartment, like that wouldn't have been allowed in 1912 either. You don't socially.
Well, it would have been with a Ziegfeld star. Everyone just would have, just looked the other way. I mean, shit happened, but yeah. I mean, the whole thing is silly. But you can see Mr. Monotony if you really, really want to, in the 1994 compilation film. That's Entertainment 3.
It's the third one.
Yes, I think. Well, the first two are just like a greatest hits reel of like movies. And I think 3, they actually went to the vault and like started to put in some cut numbers and things that people didn't know because they were reaching for number 3.
Yeah.
But I think that the outfit was really similar to what she later wore in Summer Stock, where it's like a tuxedo from the waist up, but basically a unitard and fishnets from the waist down.
I love that look.
And, I think it's just, they said, no, it would never have worked in 1912. And maybe they just thought, this movie's getting too long. It's like, okay, let's not cut anything of Fred Astaire tap dancing with a bunch of drums for 10 minutes at the beginning of this movie.
Long.
Let's cut a Judy Garland number. That makes zero sense to me, but whatever.
Maybe cut a bunch of swells instead. Or a couple.
Yeah, a couple verses. Absolutely could do that. I think it's time for us to play a game.
Yes.
Okay, so this game is just called Random Holiday Musical because this film had so little to do with Easter, like nothing to do with it. Opened on Easter and it ended on Easter, and there was a parade with big, fancy hats in the opening and closing scenes. That's it. That's all we see of Easter. Nothing about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Thank God. This one, I want you to pick a holiday, any holiday. The more random, the better. Build a musical to be released in 2024 around the holiday. And you could even do it as slim as Easter Parade did it, connected with Easter, or you can really build your holiday into a whole plot. Doesn't matter. What I really want to know is who's writing the score, who are your leads, and give me the quick elevator pitch. What's this movie about? Why is it entertaining? Why would people want to see it? And Matt, I'm going to have you go first.
Okay, so my movie is actually not about a random holiday so much. It is about one of the most American of holidays, or actually what's adjacent to one of the most American of holidays. When I think about zaniness, I think about Black Friday craziness that people do or used to do. Now that we shop so much online, we have lost the craziness of Black Friday, where people would get up at 4:00 in the morning to start their shopping for the Christmas season.
Oh, but please tell me you've set this movie in the 80s or before. So I was
thinking 1990s, where it got really crazy.
Excellent.
Okay, because when I was in high school, I had a friend's mom. Like, she and her sister, like, this was their event. Like, they would, after cooking all of Thanksgiving meal and like doing all the prep and like clean up and everything, they would go to sleep while people were watching football, wake up at like 4:00 the next morning and start their shopping extravaganza, which I just could not wrap my brain around. So that's what this is going to be about. This is going to be, the opening scene is going to be a group of people like around around this holiday table, and all of a sudden it just starts to clean up and everything as people move off, and then it's them singing about their prep for tomorrow. Like one more sleep until Black Friday is basically going to be the opening song.
It's the I Wish song.
Yeah, exactly. So the rest of it is going to be the zaniness that goes on, and like how we kind of celebrate capitalism through Black Friday, and like the pros and cons of this is really what I want to talk about. So I can't think of two better people to write a movie like this than Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Excellent.
I think lampooning something like this, like South Park or like the Book of Mormon, is really appropriate. I think that they would be really good at this and would love to do this. My cast is really going to center around Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer, and Maya Rudolph are going to be my three moms that are going to be going through this whole shopping spree, because I can't think of three funnier women and that could actually do this musically. And they look like moms too, you know what I mean? It's like, I want like that real mom that like I'm getting in there and making sure that my kids have the best Christmas ever. That's basically what this is going to be about.
Big mom energy. I love it.
Mom energy.
Big mom energy.
Okay, Allie.
Okay, so I'm very excited about this game. I love shit like this. And so I was like, what's the most random holiday that I can think of? And I went with Arbor Day. And I am so excited that I did, because Arbor Day is whatever. Yeah, okay, plant some trees. But the person who founded Arbor Day way back in the 1800s has a fascinating life. And so this is going to be more of sort of like a bio musical, highlighting one Mr. Julius Sterling Morton. Okay. He was so many things. He was governor of Nebraska. So he's from Nebraska. He founded Arbor Day in Nebraska. So Nebraska is going to play a big role in, it's going to be like the new Oklahoma, but it's going to be Nebraska. He was the third ever Secretary of Agriculture under both Grover Cleveland and William McKinley. Okay.
Please say you're casting Nick Offerman as Grover Cleveland, by the way.
I hadn't thought that far, but yes, done. Check. Check on check. Then he founded Arbor Day, and he was very, very big on the trees, all sorts of things. A couple of hilarious things about him is that he was obviously inducted into the Nebraska Hall of Fame, which is a thing that exists. He had his statue in the United States Capitol building, except his statue just this year was replaced by a statue of Willa Cather. So sorry, Julius Morton, your statue is no longer in the Capitol. It's kind of funny. So then I discovered, so he had this whole crazy career. He founded Arbor Day, all that stuff. And then I discovered that his two sons, his first son, Paul Morton, was Secretary of the Navy under Teddy Roosevelt. Okay. And his other son is the founder of Morton Salt.
Wow. That's crazy.
So nuts. All of their estates in Nebraska, they're all museums now. They all obviously have a lot of fucking trees. So if I ever go to Nebraska, I will definitely be going to Nebraska City, which is where he lived, Nebraska City, Nebraska. Very thoughtful name. So my J. Sterling Morton, as he was known, I guess he didn't like the Julius, is going to be played by Bryan Cranston because, you know, I think that he's a great sing and dance man, and he just kind of embodies that sort of like late 1800s, early 1900s look. Like he could really look. And also I'm looking at a picture right now on Wikipedia of J. Sterling Morton, and I feel like we could get there. So that's the first act. And then the second act is going to be focused mostly on Joy Morton, his son, who founded Morton Salt, which obviously he's, you know, that family's now like zillionaires upon zillionaires. And his son, when I clicked on a picture of him, is going to be played by Steve Buscemi. So we're going to take a little bit of a turn. You know, there's going to be a lot of yellow umbrellas in, you know, dance numbers, a lot of salt references, that sort of thing. And I think that Elton John is going to be is going to be writing the music and the lyrics for this.
I love it.
All right.
Musical.
I love it.
And we'll call it Arbor or something like that. Arbor exclamation.
Arbor exclamation point.
Yeah.
Okay, it's done. It's done. Okay, well, I'll get the bad news right out of the way. Matt, I also chose Trey Parker and Matt Stone with Robert Lopez to write the music and lyrics for my new musical, which is all about Columbus Day. Now, I have very strong feelings about Columbus Day. Anybody who knows me on Facebook knows that every Columbus Day, I like to post lots of rants about what a racist asshole Christopher Columbus actually was. And so I've pictured this idyllic setting. There's a lot of towns named Columbus in America, but I'm going to find some middle American state that doesn't actually have a Columbus. I don't know if there's a Columbus in Idaho, but let's just say Columbus, Idaho is where we're going to set this particular movie. And the founders, there's the city council really wants to, you know, put on a show for Columbus Day because they are Columbus, Idaho. So they get together with, they call the high school and they like get the music teacher and say, you need to write us a big musical extravaganza for Columbus Day. And he's like, okay. So he goes to the history teacher, and the history teacher is a Native American gentleman who is like, yeah, no. And he said, please, 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 I can write the music, but you need to write the script and the lyrics and everything. And he's like, okay. So they decide to do a musical about what actually happened when Columbus landed in the Dominican Republic and enslaved and tortured all the natives and basically committed genocide. And so it's a musical with people getting their hands lopped off and blood going all over the stage. You know, of course I had to go to Parker, Lopez, and Stone for that kind of stuff. So all the musical numbers will be diegetic. They are happening on stage. Lots of musical numbers that are referenced that then we get to see the whole thing happening there. By the time the thing is over, it becomes a viral sensation thanks to social media. The lefties across the country absolutely love it. And even though everyone in Columbus, Idaho hated it, by the time the movie's over, it ends up opening up on Broadway. And Columbus the Musical is a huge, tremendous hit. And it ends on Columbus Day. It's on opening night. And the history teacher is there to wish everyone a happy Indigenous Peoples Day at the end of the film. So that's Columbus Day the Musical. My cast, I would like Ben Platt to be the music teacher, who's kind of this, feckless kid who's just like, okay, I guess I'll write a musical. When he goes to the history teacher, he finds Adam Beach. I don't know if you ever saw Smoke Signals, little indie film from the 90s about 3 Native American kids on a road trip. It's a really fantastic movie, and he's a very good actor. And I don't know if he can sing and dance, but he doesn't have to, because he's not on stage ever. So he just, basically is the guy with the plan who is like, okay, let's stick it to Christopher Columbus, that asshole.
Oh, I know him from Law and Order SVU.
Okay, there you go.
He was a detective for a while.
Very good actor.
Yeah.
Then I want this like right-wing Fox News personality to like basically go on the attack against this thing, which of course then gives it all the publicity it needs to become a viral sensation. And she's going to be played by Sarah Paulson, just because I love her. And then there's going to be somebody in New York that's got some theatrical connections who's pissed off at Sarah Paulson because Sarah Paulson stole her man back in college. And so basically, just to get revenge, she's the one who was like, let's put it on Broadway, just to stick it to her. And by the time the movie's over, not only does she have a Broadway hit and is up for a Tony Award, but she also gets her man back because her man realizes that Sarah Paulson's an idiot. And this one's going to be played by Leslie Jones, only because she's hilarious and Leslie needs more work. And I just saw this little Thanksgiving commercial where, if you pay $20, Leslie Jones will come to your family and yell at them for like bringing up all kinds of inappropriate things. And it's so funny. Google Leslie Jones Daily Show Thanksgiving. It is the funniest little sketch you'll ever see in your entire life. So anyway, that's Columbus Day, the musical, everybody.
Love it.
Love it.
Hollywood,
Love it.
call us. What are you doing? Like, we could do this in our sleep. Every week we come up with these like amazing things and no one ever takes us up on it. So, we could make movies so much better. All right. It's the end of our little conversation about Easter Parade. It is time for Skip, Rent, or Buy. A skip is no thank you. It's like the Dr. Pepper peeps. Rent is like, the sour watermelon peeps. Interesting. Glad I tried them. Buy, classic marshmallow peeps. There's absolutely nothing better in the world. Allie, we're going to go backwards. We're going to go ahead and start with you.
I'm a true ass skip. Skip all day long. I hated everything about this movie. And yeah, there we go.
Okay, Dr. Pepper peeps for you. Where are you?
There's nothing horrible about this film, honestly. But at the end of the day, there's better musicals out there by both of these people, or actually all the people that are in the movie. So I would skip it. There's something else you can find that would not be as much of a waste of time. There's just not really a good point to watch the movie. All
right. I will say that, I was the first one that said, yeah, they should have ended up with different people and there's not a whole lot of sparks there. But I will watch anything with Judy Garland in it. I just, in the moments that she's on screen, between I Wish I Were in Michigan, I Love a Piano, all the ragtime violin stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff in here. For me, you can still recommend it because if you're a Judy fan like I am, it's definitely something you need to see. So I would say that it's a rent for me. It's not something that you're going to go back to like you would Meet Me in St. Louis or A Star is Born or Wizard of Oz or any number of things she did that were probably better movies. But, Judy didn't make a million movies. So if you love her like I do, it's definitely something that you'll at least watch once. So that's it for this week on the Rewind Project. Next up, we are going to be talking about a cute little show about a mental institution. I don't know a thing about it other than Olivia de Havilland stars in The Snake Pit. Sounds just like a delightful romp. So we'll find out and just catch us here next week for a conversation about that one. In the meantime, I am Eric.
I'm Allie.
I'm Matt.
Be kind. Rewind.
You've been listening to The Rewind Project. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Google Play. Please subscribe and rate us. It helps a lot. We love your comments and questions. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and via our new phone number at 202-618-2402. Thanks for listening. Be kind. Rewind.
Don't at me, pug people.